My name is Rachel Evans, and I was supposed to be the next CEO of Evans Global Media, the empire my grandfather built from scratch into a $500 million publishing powerhouse. But 10 years ago, I chose a different path, one that would change everything. I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. The grand dining room in our Manhattan penthouse sparkled under the chandelier, the table set like a magazine spread. My father, William Evans, CEO and family patriarch, stared at me with eyes full of disbelief. My mother, Caroline, clutched her wine glass so tightly I thought the stem would snap. A schoolteacher? My father's voice was deceptively calm. You want to throw away your MBA, your inheritance, your legacy, to teach? I straightened in my seat and tried to hold my voice steady. Yes. I've already accepted a position at Harborview Elementary in Brooklyn. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, he laughed, a cold, bitter sound that made my stomach turn. This is absurd. You're having a crisis. You'll come around. It's not a phase, Dad. I want to help kids. I want to build lives, not just profit margins. My mother finally spoke, gently placing her glass down. Rachel, sweetheart, please be rational. You're our only child. The company needs you. Your father needs you. No, I said, my voice firmer now. The company needs someone who loves publishing. That's never been me. My father's expression hardened. I've spent 35 years growing this company. Your grandfather died believing you'd take it to the next level. And now you're throwing it away, for crayons and snack time? Dad, His fist hit the table, rattling the silverware. No. You will take your place at Evans Global or what? I asked, my heart pounding. Or you're no longer part of this family, he said without hesitation. No trust fund. No inheritance. No apartment. No name. You walk away from the company, you walk away from everything. My mother gasped. William, please. But he didn't waver. I turned to her, desperate for support, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Her gaze was fixed on her plate, her shoulders slightly trembling. Everything I'd ever known, my childhood home, the financial safety net, my family, hinged on one decision. But I'd already made it. Slowly, I stood. My chair scraped against the polished floor. Then I guess I'm no longer your daughter. Rachel, don't, my mother whispered. But I was already walking away. That night, I packed everything I could into my old car. A suitcase of clothes, my laptop, a few photo albums. My father would cancel access to everything else by morning. I had just over $4,800 to my name, barely enough for a deposit on a small walk-up apartment in Queens. As I pulled out of the parking garage for the last time, tears blurred the city lights. But beneath the fear, beneath the heartbreak, there was something stronger, resolve. I would build something meaningful. On my own terms. And someday, I would show them I didn't need their empire to succeed. Success wasn't just measured in stock prices or corporate titles. My first apartment was a cramped studio in a weathered brownstone in Astoria, Queens. The roof leaked every time it rained. My upstairs neighbors yelled through the walls, and the radiator clanked like a broken drum all winter. But it was mine, paid for entirely with my own salary as a third-grade teacher. Those early months were the hardest of my life. I went from wearing tailored suits to browsing thrift store racks, from tasting menus to microwave ramen. Every dollar mattered. Every decision had to be practical. But each morning, when I stood in front of my class and saw their hopeful faces, I knew deep down, I had made the right choice. While my father, William Evans, spent his nights negotiating million-dollar publishing contracts, I stayed up crafting phonics games and lesson plans. While my mother mingled at charity galas in Midtown, I was buying school supplies out of my own paycheck for kids whose parents couldn't. The years passed. Through occasional updates from old friends, I heard that Evans Global Media was still thriving. My father's face appeared regularly in Forbes and Business Weekly. My mother's social calendar remained packed with fundraisers and luncheons. They had made good on their word. I was erased from their world. But I was building something too, something they couldn't quantify on a spreadsheet. I developed new methods for teaching reading, especially for children who had fallen behind. I launched an after-school literacy club for kids with working parents. I pursued my master's in education at night, driven to be the best teacher I could be. Then one day, Dr. Marcus Chin, a renowned education researcher, visited my school to observe innovative teaching practices. He sat quietly in my classroom for a week, scribbling notes and recording my lessons. "Your methods are extraordinary," he said to me one afternoon as the students filtered out. "The way you merge storytelling with phonics. I've never seen anything like it." I blushed, brushing off the compliment. "I just do what works for my students. Have you ever considered turning this into a formal curriculum? Something teachers across the country could use?" I hadn't. But the idea lingered. Over the next year, with Dr. Chin's mentorship, I began documenting every strategy and technique I used. We conducted small studies, collected data, refined the approach. The results? Transformative. Classrooms using my method saw students jump 2 full reading levels in just 1 year. Soon, education companies were calling. Publishers wanted to license the curriculum. Invitations to speak at literacy conferences poured in. The girl who had walked away from a media dynasty was now shaping education policy. I called it Read Right, a literacy program that blended phonics, storytelling, and emotional connection. Within 2 years, Read Right was implemented in over 600 schools across the country. The royalties began modestly but quickly snowballed. I used the income to launch a nonprofit that distributed free books and materials to underserved schools. I never chased the spotlight. My joy was still in the classroom. In the kids. But one day, a journalist from the New York Ledger came across Read Right and was stunned to learn its creator was Rachel Evans, the daughter disinherited by one of the most powerful media families in New York. And suddenly, the spotlight came anyway. That was when Evans' global media began to collapse. I didn't know it at the time, but my father's once mighty company was already buckling under the weight of its own arrogance. The publishing world had changed dramatically over the last decade: ebooks, digital platforms, interactive content, but my father refused to evolve. He clung to the prestige of glossy hardcovers, oversized marketing budgets, and legacy media connections that no longer held weight. At first, the signs were subtle: department budget cuts, a few high-level resignations, delayed royalty payments. But then things escalated. Failed tech investments, canceled contracts, mounting debt, lawsuits. The stock price nosedived. The company that had once been a titan of print was now crumbling under the pressure of a new era. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I had just finished wiping down the whiteboard in my classroom when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved in my contacts. "Rachel, please. We need to talk. Your father. The company. Everything's falling apart. Please call me." It was my mother. I stood frozen, staring at the screen. My hands trembled. 10 years. 10 years of complete silence, and now this. A part of me wanted to delete the message, erase it like they had erased me. But another part of me, the part that still remembered curling up on my father's lap in his office, pretending to sign contracts with his gold-plated pens, hesitated. Then another message came through, colder and heavier than the first. "The bank is foreclosing on the house. We have nowhere to go." I sat back down at my desk, rain tapping gently against the windows. My classroom was empty, but the air felt thick. I opened a news app and typed in the company name. The headline hit me like a punch in the gut. Evans Global Media faces bankruptcy, industry giant falls. The article laid it all bare. Millions in losses. Mass layoffs. Lawsuits from unpaid vendors. Analysts predicting total collapse within weeks. My family's empire, once featured in Fortune magazine, was now worth almost nothing. Another message came in: "Please, Rachel. We need you. That word, need, echoed in my mind like an insult. Where was that need when I was shivering in a one-room apartment, heating up instant soup on a hot plate? Where was it when I walked away from everything and cried myself to sleep, wondering if my parents would ever call? I closed the article and packed up my bag, heading home to my modest but warm house in Queens. Paid for by my own work. Built on my curriculum, read write, not family legacy. As I chopped vegetables for dinner, my phone kept buzzing. They're taking everything. Your father isn't well. Please just talk to us. Finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, grabbed my phone, and pressed call. She answered on the first ring. Rachel? Her voice cracked. Oh, thank God. What do you want, Mom? We need help. The company, the house, everything is gone. Your father, he's not handling it well. We don't have anywhere to go. I closed my eyes. My voice was tight. And now you want my help? After 10 years of pretending I didn't exist? I know we hurt you, she whispered. We were wrong. So wrong. But please, Rachel, we're still your parents. Before I could respond, a second voice came through, rough and defensive. Are we done now? It was my father. James, my mother snapped, clearly trying to stop him. No, Elizabeth. If she called just to gloat, let her gloat. Go ahead, Rachel. Tell us how we deserve this. Tell us karma finally caught up with us. I stared at the wall in silence, the sound of rain still ticking against the window. He wasn't broken. He wasn't sorry. He was angry that his golden world had fallen apart, and that I was the only one standing. His words didn't make me angry, not really. What I felt was deeper than that. A heavy, aching sadness that settled in my chest. Is that what you think of me, Dad? I said quietly. That I'd enjoy seeing you lose everything? Silence. I never wanted any of this, I continued. I just wanted to teach. To help children. Why wasn't that enough for you? Because it was beneath you, he snapped suddenly. A member of the Evans family, teaching elementary school? We had bigger plans for you. Your plans, I corrected him. Not mine. The room went still again, the weight of the past pressing into every corner. Then my mother's voice broke the silence, small and strained. Rachel, please. We have nowhere else to turn. I took a long breath. Against all logic, against all the bitterness that still pulsed beneath my skin, I said, come to my house tomorrow. Noon. We'll talk. After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my tea going cold, thinking about how full circle life could be. My grandfather, Robert Evans, started Evans Global Media with a single refurbished press and a borrowed office space. My father had turned it into a $500 million empire. And I, the daughter expected to carry that legacy, had walked away. And now, here we were. The next day, exactly at noon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and was stunned. My father, once a walking billboard for luxury suits and power lunches, stood before me in worn slacks and a faded polo. My mother, always pristine in designer silk, wore jeans and a simple sweater. They looked older. Smaller. Not just physically, but diminished. Come in, I said. They entered slowly, glancing around my cozy home. Their eyes landed on the student artwork covering the hallway walls, the stacks of children's books on the shelves, the framed newspaper article about read-write hanging near the stairs. It's nice, my mother offered, her voice unsure. It's mine, I replied. Paid for with my own money. My father shifted uncomfortably. Rachel, about the company. I know, I interrupted. I've seen the headlines. The digital age caught up with you, didn't it? He looked down, embarrassed. We thought print would always have a place. We didn't adapt fast enough. And when we finally tried, it was too late. He opened his hands as if to say, "What more can I explain? What exactly do you want from me?" I asked as I set down 2 mugs of coffee. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. "We've been following your work with ReadWrite," she said. It's remarkable. What you've built." I let out a sharp laugh. "Now you think it's remarkable? 10 years ago, you called it a waste of potential." "We were wrong," my father said, the words dragging out of his mouth like lead. "About everything. About you." My mother opened the folder and pushed it toward me. Inside were financial reports, charts, and licensing contracts. "Evans Global still has assets," she said quickly. "The infrastructure, our distribution networks, relationships with major authors and retailers. With the right digital strategy." "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "Are you seriously here to ask me to save the company?" They exchanged a glance. "We thought," my father began, his voice tentative, "given your success in educational publishing, maybe you'd want to step in. Help rebuild it. You have the vision we didn't." "The same company you kicked me out of?" I asked flatly. "The same one that called me an embarrassment to the family?" "Rachel," my mother pleaded. "We know we don't deserve your help. But this isn't just about us anymore. There are hundreds of employees. People with families. They'll lose everything too." And there it was, the real request. Not a second chance for them. A lifeline for everyone else. Their jobs. Their families. The authors who depend on us. Your grandfather's legacy. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare use Grandpa against me." My voice was sharper than I expected. But it cut through the air like a blade. He built that company from nothing. He understood the value of hard work, and the courage it takes to follow your passion. He would have supported my choice to teach. My father's face darkened. "You don't know that." "Actually," I said, rising from my chair, "I do." I walked into my home office and returned with a small wooden frame. Inside it was a yellowing piece of stationery with my grandfather's handwriting. I handed it to my father and stood back, watching. My mother leaned in over his shoulder as they read. I knew the words by heart. "My dearest Rachel. Your father tells me you're struggling with a choice, between joining the company and following your dream of teaching. Let me tell you something. I didn't build Evans Global Media because I wanted wealth. I built it because I loved books, loved how they change lives, open minds, and tell the stories of who we are. If teaching is how you want to change the world, then follow that path with your whole heart. Success isn't measured by what you own, but by the lives you touch. All my love. Grandpa." My father's hands trembled slightly as he lowered the letter. He never said. "You never asked," I said softly. "You were too busy building your empire to notice it was crushing me." My mother wiped a tear from her cheek. "We've made so many mistakes, Rachel, with the company, with you, with everything." I gently took the letter back and returned it to its frame. "Yes. You have. And now you want me to fix it." "We don't deserve your help," my father said after a long pause. "But those employees, their families." I looked at them, really looked. They weren't the same people who had sat at that dinner table a decade ago, issuing ultimatums. The arrogance was gone. In its place, desperation. And maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of humility. "I'll think about it," I said at last. "Not for you. For Grandpa's legacy. And for those families." Their faces lit up with fragile hope. "Send me everything," I continued. "Full financials, current contracts, outstanding debts. I'll have my team review it." My father blinked. "Your team?" I smiled faintly. "Did you think ReadWrite runs itself? I have a full staff now, educational publishers, curriculum developers, digital specialists. We're not just selling books anymore, Dad. We're transforming how children learn to read." And for the first time, I saw it, real respect in his eyes. After they left, I sat quietly in my home office. Across the room hung a wall of thank you letters, from students, teachers, parents. Right beside them was my first teaching paycheck, framed and dated, a reminder of where I started and why I walked away. I picked up my phone and called Marcus Chin, my business partner and the brilliant mind who helped turn ReadWrite from a classroom method into a national movement. "Marcus," I said, "remember how we talked about expanding into traditional publishing?" "Yes. I think we've got an opportunity. A broken publishing house with a legendary name." There was a pause. "Evans Global? That's the one. Are you sure about this, Rachel?" I looked at my grandfather's letter. Then at a photo of my third-grade class, all of them beaming with gap-toothed smiles and eager eyes. "Yes," I said, firm and clear. "But we're doing it my way." A week later, I stepped through the massive revolving doors of Evans Global Media for the first time in over a decade. The building hadn't changed. The polished marble floors. The high glass ceilings. The gold-plated logo behind the front desk. It still looked like a shrine to power and prestige. But I had changed. I wasn't here as the disowned daughter anymore. I was here as the CEO of ReadWrite Educational Publishing. And this time, I was writing the next chapter. I wasn't walking into that boardroom to take the place they'd once assigned me, to be the obedient daughter groomed to inherit someone else's vision. I was there as a successful entrepreneur, a leader in my field, and the CEO of ReadWrite Educational Publishing, ready to negotiate on my own terms. As I stepped into the boardroom, silence swept through the room. My team from ReadWrite followed behind me, carrying tablets, files, and confidence. My father sat at the far end of the long table, dwarfed by the chair that once gave him authority. The board members, mostly longtime friends of his who had watched me grow up, shifted in their seats, visibly uncomfortable. "Good morning," I said coolly, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin." For the next 2 hours, we went through every painful detail of Evans Global Media's downward spiral. The numbers were even worse than I'd anticipated. It wasn't just a struggling business, it was a sinking ship. Traditional print revenues had collapsed. Their last-minute leap into digital had stumbled. The ebook division was underfunded, mismanaged, and riddled with licensing issues. Every corner of the company screamed for modernization, but no one had listened in time. My father, his voice weighed down by exhaustion and shame, finally said, "As you can see, we need immediate intervention to survive." I opened my laptop and connected to the projector. "I've reviewed everything," I said, clicking to the first slide of my presentation. "And I have a proposal. ReadWrite is prepared to acquire Evans Global Media." Gasps filled the room. My father's face went pale. "This won't be a bailout," I continued. "This will be a complete restructuring." I laid out my vision clearly. Evans Global would split into 2 distinct divisions. One would merge with ReadWrite's education wing, bringing in new curriculum specialists and reaching millions more students nationwide. The second would be rebranded entirely, a new, digital-first publishing company built from the ground up. "There will be major changes," I said, flipping through projections. "Executive salaries will be slashed. Redundant positions will be eliminated. We'll reinvest heavily into technology and digital media. Some of you won't like these changes. Some of you won't survive them. You can't just come in here and," one board member started, voice rising. "Actually," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "I can." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "You have 2 options, accept our offer, or file for bankruptcy. Those are the only paths forward." My father shifted in his chair. "And, what about current leadership?" I met his eyes evenly. "All executive roles will be reevaluated. Including yours, Dad." Voices rose in protest around the table. I let it go on for a few seconds, then raised my hand. "This isn't personal. It's business. Isn't that what you always told me, Dad?" He flinched slightly, the echo of his old words hitting harder now that they were turned on him. "I'll give you 1 hour to discuss," I said, standing. "But remember, the alternative is losing everything." In the hallway, Marcus' chin touched my shoulder gently. "You okay?" I nodded. "They'll take the deal. They have no choice." And they did. By day's end, the preliminary contracts were signed. Read-Write would acquire Evans Global Media, not to preserve it as it was, but to transform it into something new. Something better. As I packed up my files, my father appeared in the doorway. For once, he didn't look like a CEO. He just looked like a man who had lost more than he could admit. "You've grown, formidable," he said quietly. "I learned from you," I replied. "Just not in the way you hoped." He stepped into the office, his old office, and looked around, touching the edge of the desk. "I spent years thinking I was building something great," he murmured. "I didn't realize I was destroying something even more important." "Our relationship," I said. He nodded, eyes glistening. "I was so focused on the Evans legacy that I couldn't see you were building one of your own. One that might mean even more." "Not more," I said, shaking my head. "Just different." He moved to the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said softly. "Not because you saved the company, but because you stayed true to yourself." And for the first time in a very long time, I believed he meant it. "You're not just saving the company," my father said quietly, still looking out at the skyline. "You followed your heart. That's what would have made your grandfather proud." I swallowed hard. "He'd be proud of you too, Dad, if you let yourself learn from all this. It's not too late." He turned to face me. For the first time in my adult life, there were tears in his eyes. "Will you?" His voice cracked. "Will you teach me how to start over?" Something inside me shifted, some last wall I'd kept around my heart since that night they turned me away. It cracked wide open. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I will." The transformation of Evans Global Media over the next year was anything but easy. We faced protests from entrenched executives, bitter resistance to digital reform, and the unavoidable sting of necessary layoffs. The old guard clung to the past with all their might. But we also hired fresh talent, young, passionate minds who believed in change. We launched 2 successful digital-first imprints, built an interactive reading platform for children, and expanded our educational publishing division globally. Read-Write became a cornerstone of the new Evans brand. My father stepped down as CEO and, to my surprise, didn't fight it. Instead, he took on a new role mentoring young authors and editors, something he discovered brought him more joy than quarterly reports ever had. My mother, after some deep soul-searching, started a community literacy program for adults. She used Read-Write's methods to help parents learn alongside their children, and the results were beautiful, families reading together for the first time. 1 year after the acquisition, I was back in my 3rd grade classroom for my weekly lesson. Though I'd become a business leader, I refused to give up teaching completely. I still needed the connection, the daily reminder of why I chose this path. We were mid-circle time when a knock came at the door. It was my father. "Sorry to interrupt," he said with a smile. "I'm here for career day." I blinked. I hadn't expected him to volunteer. The students beamed. "We'd been preparing for career day for weeks." "Class," I said, rising, "this is my dad. He works in publishing, helping people tell their stories." He sat awkwardly on a tiny plastic chair in our reading circle, clearly out of place among the finger-painted walls and colorful rugs. But as he began to speak about books, about how stories could change the world, I watched something remarkable happen. The corporate persona melted away. Instead, I saw a man who remembered why he fell in love with publishing in the first place. "But you know what?" he said, looking around the room. "The most important stories aren't always in books. Sometimes they're right here." He tapped his chest. "Like the story of a brave teacher, my daughter, who taught me that success isn't about how much money you make, but about how many lives you touch." He looked at me as he said it, and I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes. Later, during the lunch break, we sat together in my classroom, sipping coffee from mismatched mugs. The hum of the school drifted around us. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Walking away from the company all those years ago?" I glanced around the room, at the student artwork tacked to the walls, the worn books in the reading corner, the awards Read-Write had received for innovation in education. "No," I said honestly. "I regret that it broke our family apart for so long. But I'll never regret following my heart. Look what it led to, not just success, but purpose." He nodded, slowly. For once, I saw not the executive, but the father I had longed for. "You know," he said softly, "when you told me you wanted to be a teacher, I thought you were choosing a smaller life." He paused, eyes glinting with understanding. "But I was wrong. You chose a bigger one. One big enough for teaching and business. For your dreams and our legacy. And big enough," he added, voice trembling, "for forgiveness." I reached across the desk and took his hand. "Yes," I whispered. "It is." That evening, we had dinner together, just the three of us, in my parents' new home. It wasn't a mansion. It was modest, simple, and warm. And for the first time in years, it felt like family again. Something profound settled in me. 10 years ago, I believed I had to choose, my family's definition of success or my own. I thought it was one or the other. But life taught me something far richer. Sometimes, the greatest success doesn't come from choosing one path, it comes from bridging them. My grandfather's letter hung framed on the wall in both of my offices, at Read-Write and the newly restructured Evans Global Publishing. His words still echoed through my mind: success isn't measured by the size of your bank account but by the lives you touch. By following that wisdom, I hadn't just rescued a floundering company. I had helped restore something even more fragile, my family. The next morning, I stood in front of my third-grade class, leading a lesson on storytelling and grammar. On my desk sat acquisition reports and digital publishing contracts waiting to be reviewed. A meeting with the board loomed in the afternoon. And yet, there I was, back in the classroom, where it all began. Because in my heart, I now carried a truth far deeper than any balance sheet. I had crafted a life that honored both sides of who I was. The teacher and the entrepreneur. The daughter and the leader. The legacy I was born into and the legacy I built myself. Sometimes, being disowned isn't the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning of something bigger, something braver, something more authentic. Not built from spite. Not from revenge. But from the pure, stubborn desire to follow your heart, and make the world a little better in the process. And if you're very, very lucky, it leads you right back to where you started. Not as the person they expected, but as the person you were always meant to become. Hey everyone, it's Rachel. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Truly. Sharing this journey hasn't been easy, but I know I'm not alone. Maybe some of you have stood at that same crossroads, torn between what your family expects and what your heart knows is right. Maybe you've been told your dreams were too small, or that your passion didn't matter. I get it. I've lived it. But I want you to hear me when I say this: choosing yourself is never the wrong decision. I would love to hear from you. What part of my story spoke to you the most? Have you ever had to walk away from something, or someone, to stay true to who you are? Leave a comment below. Share your journey. Let's build a space where people can talk about the courage it takes to follow your own path, even when it means going alone. And for those of you who might be struggling right now, trying to balance who you are with what others expect of you, here's my advice: don't let anyone define the size of your life. Just because your dream doesn't look like success to someone else doesn't mean it's not worth it. Sometimes the quiet, personal victories, like helping a child read their first book or reconnecting with a loved one, mean more than any title or paycheck ever could. Support me by hitting the like button, subscribing for more stories like this, and most importantly, join the conversation below. Whether it's advice, encouragement, or just your own truth, your words matter. Let's remind each other that success isn't just about what we build, it's about who we become while building it.